The Midnight Rescue. A stranger in the snow. The clock on the dashboard read 11:47 p.m. when William Harrison noticed something unusual through the curtain of falling snow. His architectural blueprints sat forgotten on the passenger seat as he slowed his sedan to a crawl. At first, he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. No one in their right mind would be walking along Route 9 during a snowstorm, especially not in formal attire. But there she was, as real as the leather steering wheel beneath his hands. A woman in an elaborate wedding gown trudged along the shoulder of the road, her bare feet leaving prints in the fresh powder. The dress, clearly expensive with its intricate lace detailing and crystal embellishments, was ruined at the bottom, the white fabric stained gray from road dirt and melting snow. Her dark auburn hair hung in wet strands around her face, and she carried a pair of silver heels in one trembling hand. William pulled his car to the side of the road, his heart hammering with concern. He had not stopped to help a stranger since before his wife Rebecca passed away 2 years ago. Since then, he had built walls around his heart, focusing solely on his daughter Charlie and his work. Yet something about this woman's posture, the way she held her shoulders back despite obvious distress, made him reach for the door handle. The decision to stop. Rolling down his window, William called out over the sound of the wind. "Miss, are you okay? Do you need help?" The woman stopped walking and turned to face him. Even in the harsh glare of his headlights, her beauty was striking. She had delicate features, high cheekbones, and eyes the color of storm clouds. Those eyes held a depth of emotion that made William's chest tighten with recognition. He had seen that same look in his own reflection after Rebecca's funeral, a mixture of devastation and fierce determination to keep moving forward. "I appreciate your concern, but I can manage," she said, her voice cultured and steady despite the chattering of her teeth. She wrapped her arms around herself, the wedding dress providing little protection against the bitter cold. William put his car in park and stepped out, immediately feeling the sting of ice against his face. "With all due respect, you are going to freeze to death out here. Please, at least let me drive you somewhere warm." She hesitated, glancing back down the dark road as if expecting someone to appear. When she looked at him again, her carefully maintained composure cracked just slightly. "I don't have anywhere to go," she admitted quietly. A moment of understanding. Something in her confession resonated with William. He remembered the months after Rebecca's death when he had felt utterly lost, wandering through life without direction or purpose. It was only Charlie, his 7-year-old daughter, who had given him a reason to keep going. "My name is William Harrison," he said gently. "I have a warm car, no ulterior motives, and I promise you are safe with me. Whatever happened tonight, you do not deserve to be out here alone in this weather." The woman studied his face for a long moment, and William had the strange sensation of being carefully evaluated. Finally, she nodded. "Victoria," she said simply. "Victoria Bennett." As she settled into the passenger seat, William noticed the way her hands shook as she fastened the seatbelt. He reached into the back and pulled out the fleece blanket Charlie always insisted on keeping in the car. "Here, this will help." Victoria accepted it with a grateful smile, pulling the soft fabric around her shoulders. The contrast was almost comical, the luxurious wedding gown covered by a purple fleece blanket decorated with cartoon unicorns. But neither of them laughed. The story begins to unfold. William turned up the heat and pulled back onto the road, unsure of where to go. "Do you want to talk about it?" he asked after several minutes of silence. Victoria stared out the window at the passing landscape. "I was supposed to get married tonight," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "To Preston Montgomery. Do you know who that is?" William nodded. Everyone in Connecticut knew Preston Montgomery, the tech billionaire whose face graced magazine covers and business journals. "I have heard of him. My father arranged it," Victoria continued, her hands twisting the blanket. "His company has been struggling for years, making poor investments and risky decisions. Preston offered to buy out the company and inject capital, but only if I agreed to marry him. My father presented it as my duty to the family, to our employees who would lose their jobs if the company failed. William felt anger rising in his chest. So he sold you? In a way, yes. Victoria turned to look at him, and he saw tears glistening in her eyes. I convinced myself I could do it. Preston was not cruel, just distant and calculating. I told myself that love was not as important as security, that I would learn to be content. But tonight, as I stood in that bridal suite with my mother fastening the buttons on this dress, I realized I was about to make the biggest mistake of my life. A leap of faith. The snow was falling heavier now, and William concentrated on keeping the car steady on the slippery road. What did you do? I ran, Victoria said simply. I waited until everyone was gathering in the ceremony hall, and I walked out the back entrance. I just started walking, with no plan, no destination. Just away. William pulled into the parking lot of an all-night diner, the neon sign casting red and blue shadows across Victoria's face. You are incredibly brave, he said. It takes real courage to walk away from what everyone expects of you. Or incredible foolishness, Victoria replied, but there was a hint of a smile on her lips. Sometimes, William said, turning off the engine, those two things are exactly the same. Come on, let me buy you a cup of coffee, and we can figure out what happens next. As they walked toward the diner entrance, Victoria still wrapped in the unicorn blanket over her ruined wedding dress, William felt something shift inside his chest. For the first time in 2 years, he felt truly alive. Uncovered truths. The diner confession. The warmth of the diner wrapped around them like a comforting embrace as William and Victoria slid into a corner booth. The late-night waitress, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a name tag reading Dorothy, barely raised an eyebrow at Victoria's wedding dress. She had probably seen stranger things during the graveyard shift. 2 coffees, please, William ordered. And maybe some soup if you have it. Dorothy nodded and disappeared behind the counter. Victoria pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders, suddenly aware of how ridiculous she must look. But William's expression held no judgment, only concern and curiosity. Tell me about your family, William said gently. If you want to. Victoria wrapped her hands around the warm coffee mug Dorothy had placed before her. The Bennetts have been in shipping for 4 generations. My great-grandfather built the company from nothing, turning it into one of the most respected logistics firms on the East Coast. My father inherited it 20 years ago and has been slowly running it into the ground ever since. She took a sip of coffee, letting the bitter warmth ground her. He made bad investments in overseas ventures, trusted the wrong partners, expanded too quickly without proper capital. By the time I finished business school, the company was hemorrhaging money. I tried to help, suggested restructuring, cutting unnecessary expenses, but he would not listen to me. I was just his daughter, what could I possibly know? The billionaire's proposal. William leaned forward, his attention fully on her. There was something about his presence that made Victoria want to continue, to finally tell someone the truth she had been holding inside for months. Preston Montgomery approached my father 6 months ago, Victoria continued. His tech conglomerate was looking to expand into logistics and supply chain management. He offered to acquire Bennett Shipping, keep the name, retain most of the employees, and inject enough capital to not only save the company but make it profitable again. That sounds like a good deal, William observed. It was, until Preston met me at a company dinner. Victoria's jaw tightened at the memory. He decided he wanted more than just the company. He told my father he would only proceed with the acquisition if I agreed to marry him within 6 months. He said it would be a merger of families, a business partnership that would benefit everyone. William's expression darkened. He bought you like an asset. My father certainly saw it that way, Victoria said bitterly. He called me into his office the next day and explained how this marriage would save the company, save jobs, preserve the family legacy. He made me feel like I was being selfish for even hesitating. My mother supported him completely, talking about what a wonderful match it was, how lucky I was to marry someone so successful and powerful. A different kind of loss. Dorothy returned with 2 bowls of chicken noodle soup, and Victoria realized how hungry she was. She had not eaten since breakfast, too nervous about the wedding to keep anything down. "What about you?" Victoria asked, wanting to shift the focus away from her own troubles. "You mentioned you have a daughter?" William's face softened immediately. "Charlie. She is 7 years old, smart as a whip, and the reason I get up every morning." He paused, stirring his soup absently. "Her mother, my wife Rebecca, passed away 2 years ago. Cancer. It happened fast, too fast. One day we were planning our 10th anniversary trip, and 6 months later I was a widower raising a little girl on my own." Victoria felt her heart clench with sympathy. "I am so sorry, William." "Thank you," he said quietly. "It has been hard, especially for Charlie. She was only 5 when it happened, too young to really understand why her mother was not coming home. I threw myself into work, into being the best father I could be, but some days I still feel like I am barely keeping my head above water." Discovering common ground. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the diner's fluorescent lights casting a soft glow over their table. Outside, the snow continued to fall, creating a cocoon of privacy in the nearly empty restaurant. "Can I ask you something?" Victoria said. "Why did you stop to help me tonight? Most people would have just driven past." William considered the question carefully. "Honestly, I almost did. After Rebecca died, I built walls around myself and Charlie. It was easier to focus on the 2 of us and let the rest of the world fade away. But when I saw you walking in that dress, you looked so determined and so lost at the same time. It reminded me of how I felt after the funeral, like I was moving forward but had no idea where I was going." Victoria felt tears prickling at her eyes. "That is exactly how I feel right now. I walked away from Preston, from my family's expectations, from everything I was supposed to be. But I have no plan, no backup, no idea what comes next." "Sometimes not knowing is the first step toward figuring it out," William said. "When Rebecca died, everyone had advice for me. Move on, stay busy, start dating again, sell the house, keep the house. But the only thing that actually helped was admitting I did not have all the answers and taking things one day at a time." The phone call. Victoria's phone, which she had silenced hours ago, suddenly vibrated in the small beaded purse she had somehow managed to keep with her. She pulled it out and saw 17 missed calls from her father, 12 from her mother, and 23 from Preston. "They are looking for me," she said, her voice tight with anxiety. "What do you want to do?" William asked. Before Victoria could answer, the phone rang again. This time it was her best friend Jasmine, the one person Victoria knew she could trust. She answered. "Tori. Oh my God, where are you? Your father is losing his mind, Preston has security looking for you, your mother fainted. Everyone thinks you were kidnapped or had an accident or something." "I am safe, Jazz," Victoria said firmly. "I was not kidnapped. I left on my own." "I figured as much when I saw your note," Jasmine said. Victoria had left a simple message in the bridal suite: "I cannot do this. I am sorry. But you need to know, Preston is not taking this well. He is making threats about the company, about your father. He is saying if you do not come back and go through with the wedding, he will not only pull out of the acquisition but he will actively work to destroy Bennett Shipping." Victoria felt the blood drain from her face. "He cannot do that. He is Preston Montgomery," Jasmine said grimly. "He can do pretty much anything he wants. Your father is begging you to come back, to just get through the ceremony. He says you can figure out the rest later. A stand for freedom." William watched Victoria's expression change from shock to anger to determination. When she hung up, she sat very still for a moment, processing. "He is threatening your family business if you do not marry him," William said. It was not a question. "Yes," Victoria whispered. "And my father wants me to come back, to sacrifice myself to save his legacy." "What do you want to do?" Victoria looked at William, really looked at him. Here was a man who had lost everything and rebuilt his life with quiet courage. He had not given up when tragedy struck. He had found a way forward for himself and his daughter. And he had stopped to help a stranger in a snowstorm without expecting anything in return. "I want to fight," Victoria said, her voice growing stronger. "Preston thinks he can manipulate me because I am just a woman he can acquire like property. My father thinks I will cave because I have always been the dutiful daughter. But they are both wrong. I am not going back." William smiled, and it transformed his entire face. "Good. Then let me help you. I am an architect, not a lawyer or a business strategist, but I know people who are. We can figure this out together." "Why would you do that for me?" Victoria asked. "You do not even know me." "Because," William said simply, "sometimes the universe puts people in our path exactly when we need them. You needed help tonight, and maybe I needed to remember that there is still good worth fighting for in this world." The plan takes shape. They stayed in the diner until 3 in the morning, making plans. William called his friend Nathan, a corporate attorney who owed him a favor from college. Nathan agreed to meet them the next day to review the acquisition contract and look for leverage against Preston's threats. Victoria called Jasmine back and asked her to quietly gather documentation about the company's financials and the acquisition terms. If Preston was going to play dirty, Victoria needed to understand exactly what weapons she had at her disposal. As they finally prepared to leave, William turned to Victoria. "You can stay in my guest room as long as you need. Charlie is at her friend's house tonight, but she will be home tomorrow afternoon. I will explain that you are a friend who needed help, and we can figure out the details as we go." "Thank you," Victoria said, and she meant it with every fiber of her being. "I do not know how I will ever repay you for this kindness." "You already have," William said. "You reminded me that taking a chance on someone, opening your life to possibility, that is what makes us human. I had forgotten that." As they drove through the quiet streets toward William's home, Victoria felt something shift inside her. For the first time in months, perhaps years, she felt like herself again. Not the dutiful daughter, not the corporate acquisition, but Victoria Bennett, a woman with her own dreams and the courage to fight for them. The snow had stopped falling, and the world looked clean and new under its white blanket. Victoria took it as a sign. This was not an ending but a beginning, and she was ready to discover where it would lead. Love reborn. Morning light and new beginnings. Victoria woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains. For a disorienting moment, she forgot where she was, then the events of the previous night came rushing back. She was in William Harrison's guest room, having fled her own wedding and spent the night planning a strategy to fight back against Preston Montgomery's manipulation. The wedding dress hung on the closet door where she had carefully placed it before sleeping. Looking at it now in the morning light, Victoria felt no regret, only relief. She had escaped a prison of her own family's making. A soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Victoria? I made coffee and breakfast if you are hungry. Take your time." William's voice was gentle, respectful of her space. Victoria found herself smiling as she pulled on the comfortable sweatpants and oversized shirt he had left folded outside her door last night. When she emerged, she found William in the kitchen, scrambling eggs while bread toasted. The house was warm and lived in, with pictures on the walls and a child's drawings held to the refrigerator with magnets. It felt like a home, not just a house, and Victoria felt a pang of longing for something she had never really had. "Good morning," William said, handing her a mug of coffee prepared exactly as she had mentioned liking it at the diner. The small gesture of remembering touched her deeply. "Good morning." This smells wonderful. Meeting Charlie. They had just finished eating when the front door burst open and a whirlwind of energy bounded into the kitchen. Charlie Harrison was a beautiful little girl with her father's dark hair and what must have been her mother's bright blue eyes. She stopped short when she saw Victoria, curiosity replacing surprise almost instantly. "Dad, who is this?" William crouched down to his daughter's level. "Charlie, this is my friend Victoria. She needed a place to stay last night, so she is going to be our guest for a little while. Is that okay with you?" Charlie studied Victoria with the serious intensity only children can manage. "Did something bad happen to you?" Victoria felt her throat tighten. She knelt down as well, meeting Charlie at eye level. "Something sad happened, yes. But I met your dad, and he helped me feel better. You are very lucky to have such a kind father." "I know," Charlie said matter-of-factly. "He is the best dad in the whole world. Did you know my mom is in heaven? But she still watches over us." "Your dad told me about your mom," Victoria said softly. "She must have been a wonderful person." "She was," Charlie said, then brightened. "Do you want to see my room? I have a collection of rocks that I found at the beach." As Charlie dragged Victoria upstairs to show off her treasures, William watched them go with an expression of wonder on his face. He had not brought anyone into their home since Rebecca died, and seeing his daughter warm up to Victoria so quickly felt like a sign. The confrontation. That afternoon, while Charlie was occupied with her art supplies in the living room, Nathan arrived with news. The corporate attorney looked troubled as he spread papers across William's dining room table. "Preston Montgomery is ruthless, but he has made some mistakes in his eagerness to control this situation," Nathan explained. "The acquisition contract has several clauses that could work in your favor, Victoria. Specifically, the personal relationship clause he insisted on including actually works against him now." "How so?" Victoria asked, leaning forward. "He tied the business acquisition to a personal marriage contract, which is highly unusual and potentially unenforceable. If we can prove coercion or duress, the entire deal becomes questionable. More importantly, I did some digging into Preston's other acquisitions. He has a pattern of aggressive tactics that border on illegal. If we threaten to expose his business practices, he might back down rather than risk public scrutiny." William watched Victoria's expression shift from hope to determination. "What do we need to do?" Before Nathan could answer, the doorbell rang. William went to answer it, returning moments later with an expression of concern. "Victoria, your father is here. And Preston Montgomery is with him." Standing her ground. Victoria's hands trembled, but she stood up straight, squaring her shoulders. "Let them in." Richard Bennett entered first, looking haggard and angry. Behind him came Preston Montgomery, impeccably dressed in a custom suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. His handsome face was a mask of controlled fury. "Victoria, this has gone on long enough," her father said immediately. "It is time to stop this foolishness and come home. We can still salvage the wedding. Preston has agreed to a quiet ceremony." "No," Victoria said firmly. "I am not marrying Preston, and I am not coming home to be bartered like property." Preston's eyes narrowed as he looked around the modest home, his gaze settling on William with disdain. "So this is where you have been hiding? With some middle-class nobody who thinks he can play hero." "Watch your mouth," William said quietly, but there was steel in his voice. "This is my home, and you will speak respectfully or leave." Preston laughed, a cold sound without humor. "Respect? You want me to respect the man who has destroyed a multi-million-dollar business deal and ruined my reputation? Victoria left me at the altar, humiliated me in front of everyone who matters. There will be consequences. The truth comes out." Victoria stepped forward, placing herself between Preston and William. "You do not care about being humiliated, Preston. You care about losing control. You thought you could buy me along with my father's company, but I am not for sale. Your father already sold you, Preston said cruelly. Or did he not tell you that he took a substantial advance payment from me months ago? Money that will have to be returned with interest if this deal falls through. Money he does not have. Victoria turned to her father, who had the grace to look ashamed. Dad? Is that true? Richard Bennett nodded miserably. I had no choice, Victoria. The company was going under. I used the money to keep us afloat until the acquisition could be finalized. So you sold your daughter to cover your own mistakes, William said, his voice heavy with disgust. This is none of your business, Richard snapped. Victoria, please. If you do not do this, we will lose everything. The house, the company, our reputation. Everything your great-grandfather built will be gone. A daughter's choice. Victoria felt the weight of generations pressing down on her shoulders. She thought of her great-grandfather, who had built something from nothing through honest work and integrity. She thought of all the times her father had dismissed her ideas, ignored her input, treated her as an ornament rather than a capable businesswoman. No, she said quietly. I will not let you manipulate me anymore, Dad. You made bad choices, and you want me to pay the price. But I am done sacrificing my happiness for your pride. She turned to Nathan. Can you help my father find a way out of this that does not involve me marrying Preston? Nathan nodded. There are bankruptcy protections, restructuring options, and I believe we can make a case that Preston's advance payment was made under false pretenses. It will be messy, but it is possible. Preston's face turned red with anger. You are making a huge mistake, Victoria. I will destroy your father's company anyway. I will make sure no one in our social circle ever speaks to your family again. You will regret this. Maybe, Victoria said calmly. But I would regret marrying you more. I would spend every day wondering what my life could have been if I had the courage to choose myself. Now I will never have to wonder. Love's unexpected path. Charlie, who had been quietly watching from the doorway, suddenly ran over to Victoria and wrapped her arms around her waist. Do not let the mean man make you sad, she said fiercely. You can stay with us. Right, Dad? William moved to stand beside Victoria and Charlie, creating a united front. Right. Victoria is welcome here as long as she needs. Preston looked at the three of them with contempt, then turned on his heel and left. Richard Bennett lingered, looking at his daughter with an expression caught between anger and regret. I hope you know what you are doing, Victoria, he said finally. For the first time in my life, Dad, I do, she replied. After her father left, Victoria sank onto the couch, adrenaline draining away and leaving her exhausted. Charlie climbed up beside her, snuggling close, while William sat on her other side. What happens now? Victoria asked. Now, Nathan said, gathering his papers, we fight. We will need to move quickly, but I believe we can protect your father from the worst of Preston's threats and find a legitimate buyer for Bennett Shipping. Someone who wants the company for its value, not as leverage over you. 6 months later. The spring sunshine was warm on Victoria's face as she stood in William's backyard, now her backyard too, watching Charlie chase butterflies through the newly planted garden. So much had changed in 6 months. Nathan had found a buyer for Bennett Shipping, a logistics firm that valued the company's reputation and kept most of the employees, including offering Richard a consultant position. Preston had tried to follow through on his threats, but the exposure of his coercive business tactics had damaged his reputation more than Victoria's cancelled wedding ever could. Victoria had started her own consulting business, helping small companies develop sustainable growth strategies. It was rewarding in ways she had never experienced working for her father. But the biggest change was standing beside her, his hand finding hers as they watched his daughter play. William had become her best friend, her confidant, her partner in every way that mattered. Their relationship had grown slowly, carefully, both of them aware of the baggage they carried. But it had also grown surely, built on respect, trust, and genuine affection. "I never thought I would feel this way again," William said quietly. "After Rebecca, I thought that part of my life was over." "I never thought I would feel this way at all," Victoria replied. "I was so busy being who everyone expected me to be that I never discovered who I actually was." Charlie ran over, holding a dandelion. "Make a wish, Victoria." Victoria took the flower, looking at William and Charlie, at the home they had built together, at the life she had claimed for herself. She closed her eyes and blew, watching the seeds scatter on the wind. She did not need to wish for anything. She had already found everything she needed. A new beginning. That evening, after Charlie was asleep, William and Victoria sat on the porch swing, wrapped in a blanket against the cool spring air. The wedding dress, which Victoria had kept as a reminder of her courage, hung in the back of her closet. She occasionally looked at it and smiled, remembering the woman who had been brave enough to walk away. "Do you ever regret it?" William asked. "Walking away from that life, all that money and status?" Victoria leaned her head on his shoulder. "Not for a single second. That was not my life, it was a life someone else designed for me. This, right here, this is real." "I love you," William said, the words simple but weighted with meaning. "I love you too," Victoria replied. "Thank you for stopping that night. Thank you for seeing me when I was lost and helping me find my way." "We found our way together," William corrected gently. As they sat in comfortable silence, listening to the sounds of the suburban evening, Victoria reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had lost a family legacy but gained a real family. She had walked away from wealth but found something far more valuable. She had found herself, and in doing so, she had found love. The story that began with a woman in a wedding dress walking alone in a snowstorm had become a story of courage, redemption, and the unexpected places we find home. Victoria Bennett had asked for a ride in tears and discovered that sometimes the biggest betrayals lead to the greatest blessings. And as William pulled her closer, Victoria knew that this was not an ending but a beginning. The best chapters of her life were still unwritten, and she could not wait to see where they would lead.